Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. Actually, this podcast is the Voyage of Initiation, and I want to welcome everybody to the Voyage of Initiation. This is where the map ends and the real journey begins, not the hero's journey you've been told. You're not here to conquer, you're here to transform. Suffering is not your enemy, madness is not your flaw. They are signals, guides to something deeper. This path isn't about fixing yourself, it's about remembering who you are before the world told you what to be. You're not a follower of myths, you're a maker of them. And this is the threshold. I am George Monty, I will be your co host, and I'll kick it over to my incredible friend, Jessica, to introduce herself. Jessica, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Super excited. Episode 3.
Episode 3. There may be some new people joining us, Jessica. So I was hopeful that you could give me a little bit of background on some of the things you've been doing, what you're curious about, and the world of Jessica.
Sure. Yeah. So some recent updates since we last spoke. I know on one of our episodes, I shared my experience in Peru, where I had quite the profound experience of having acupuncture while working with the medicine San Pedro. Wachuma, and it was quite a profound experience and a very intense release of let's just say stored and suppressed emotions that got very deeply stuck inside various organs. And just after that experience, I was so amazed by how incredible that tool could be for helping people somatically release energy and stuck emotions. A lot of the stuff that I correlate in Jungian to our shadows self.
Yeah.
And I was just so inspired by that experience. And, we can talk about it more if you want at another time, but I was so inspired by what happened during that experience that the next day I woke up and said, I have to do this. So I recently started a program to get my doctorates in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And I'm also paralleling that with Celtic shamanism. So I'm working to learn the healing traditions, ancient healing traditions that have been passed down in my lineage. I'm Irish, and I'm learning from an elder in Ireland to just, learn how we used to incorporate healing through nature, healing through journeying and other aspects into the work. So I'm super excited about that. It's been so fascinating to learn. And it's funny. I actually now, again, I'm very excited. So there's a lot to share here, but I've had some dreams that I can look back on now that were kind of like pointing me in the direction of this path, which is also very Jungian. So yeah, so that's what I've been up to as of late, getting that off the ground. And I'm still working with Enthea and doing the work with Psychedelics and bringing that to employers and unions, and obviously still doing my work with coaching on top of it. So it's been exciting times.
Yeah, without a doubt. When I think about the times we're in, I was talking to Doc Askins a while back, and he was talking about like the end of the hero's journey and like us sort of evolving and our awareness sort of deepening and sort of moving past the hero's journey. And as I started reading that and thinking about today's episode, I started thinking about this new myth that I read. I think it was Nietzsche, but the myth is called the Three Metamorphoses. And I want to get into it today. I want to kind of walk through them, and I'm going to read them. I'll go through the 3 parts of it, but I'm going to pause after each part, and then we can kind of break it down and tell a little bit about where we are in that myth or some stories behind it. So, are you ready for that?
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. This is the 3 Metamorphoses, a living myth for now. And as I read these stages, the stages are the camel, the lion, and the child. And I want everybody listening this to kind of feel where you are. So if you're at home, if you're at work, you're in your car, try to figure out where you are as I read these different passages. So we're going to start with the first one right here. So the first one is the spirit of the camel. The camel kneels beneath the weight of the world. It bows before every thou shalt. It carries the burdens of its tribe, its family, its culture. It says, I will bear your expectations. I will swallow your truths. I will carry your gods upon my back and march into the desert. The camel's virtue is endurance. It suffers because it believes that suffering is noble. But the desert has no mercy. And when the camel collapses beneath the weight of inherited lies, something ancient stirs in its heart. What do you think about that? Have you had your own journey as the camel, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was definitely me for a large portion of my life.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can remember like the distinct time where it just, everything got so heavy to hold that it was really just kind of this point of destruction, where things just started falling apart. And I remember kind of slowly unfolding out of that. I was in a career that, wasn't very aligned with who I knew. I think who I knew deep down I was, but wasn't fully like carrying out yet. I don't think I fully was conscious of it, but I knew that where I was at was not the place.
Right.
So it's very confusing, but I knew I needed to kind of like at least just go in a different direction so I could get some more insights. And then, from a relationship perspective, was in relationships that weren't aligned or right for me anymore. And just dealing with a lot of the shoulds and shouldn'ts, that I think many of us very much agree to for one reason or another. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're raised really with the value of external validation being something that we really need to adopt in order to kind of survive in our cultural society. We have to, there's expectations of us, and we have to meet those expectations as kids, as teenagers, as adults coming into our careers, and we have to really adopt them in order to be accepted in society. So there's all these shoulds and shouldn'ts that you're taking on unconsciously that you haven't really even had a chance to say, like, is this for me or is this not for me? You're just kind of so confused with like the hustle and bustle and how fast everything is moving and how everything in front of you is telling you that you're supposed to be, that you just have to like go with it. And I remember that because I was doing that unconsciously, I was struggling. I also had a number of traumas that were really impacting me. But I think between traumas that were unresolved and just misalignment within my life, I was struggling tremendously with anxiety, with panic attacks, with insomnia, because something inside me was saying, like, this is not your path, you need to shift. But I wasn't fully aware of that. I was just aware of like the unease or the dis-ease of a misaligned life. And it was screaming at me from the inside. I just didn't have the conscious awareness of what it all meant. I just knew that I was really struggling and with kind of like this internal feeling. And I remember I started to undo some of it, so I had gotten out of some of relationships. I have had left work environments and just continued to do this like undoing of the onion. And then I had my, I guess, second or third psychedelic experience working with mushrooms. And it just showed me everything. It just totally showed me all of the cages that I had built, the mental cages that I had built, the societal structures that I had accepted, these norms of like who I was supposed to be, how I was supposed to look, how I needed to show up, what I needed to do, who I was in my life. And it was just all of this stuff that was like ultimately like suffocating me and just holding me so bound together. And ultimately, this experience had just then dropped all of those cages. It all dropped, it all shed. And I felt who I was without any of that binding. And it was the most freeing experience I had ever felt. And I just felt the interconnectedness of all things, and that I was totally just like liberated and free from all of these things that I thought I needed to be. And then as the medicine started to wear off, all of them started to come up one by one by one. And I could feel the weight of each one as it came on. And I got tighter and tighter and tighter. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to be that again. And it was a pretty jolting experience. And then from there, I just knew like, wow, I have a lot of work to do, but I was so grateful that I had seen who I was without it all. And then after that, the real work began. And then it was this journey that I've been on ever since of, well, I guess I started before, but the medicine obviously really like showed me a lot more. And then I've been on this journey to really just shed all of that and come into, who I really am underneath it all.
It's so beautiful. And it echoes not only my life, but I think so many people listening or watching, like you go through this life with such a heavy load and like, I would say through a large part of your adult years, like you just have more and more stacked upon you. Like you have these expectations, like you mentioned, about what you're supposed to be in a career, who you're supposed to be. And then you have all these incredible external things coming at you, like whether it's through music or whether it's through videos or movies or your relationships, of just these pretty much irrational expectations of what it takes to be a whole person or to be someone you're proud of. And like I love the metaphor of the camel, because the camel, you can stack so much on the camel. Like it just takes it and takes it and takes it until it can't take anymore. And what it sounds like to me and what you're explaining, and I know this through my own life, is that you get to a point where, it's like that saying, the straw that broke the camel's back. Like that one last thing gets piled on you and you just collapse. And then all of a sudden you're all alone out in the middle of the desert and you're like, what the fuck am I going to do now? Now what? I've just lost everything. All these burdens on my back. But it's also that freeing moment where you're like, okay, maybe I don't need to carry all this crap. Maybe all this stuff I spilled off my back, maybe I don't even need to be carrying it around. And it does feel like liberation. A lot of it's so interesting to me how this thing that felt like slavery, this thing that felt like carrying all these buckets, once you set them down, you're like, wow, that weight is gone. And even though I still see the echo of those expectations around me, I feel really free. Like maybe I can think of different things, and that's when the new insights begin to come in. Like that's when those insights of like, what do I really want to do? Who am I really? Like who am I trying to be, and why am I trying to be that person? Like that, I think it echoes that idea of the camel. And that's what I want people to know, Jessica, is that I think for so long we've been carrying this myth of the hero's journey, but I love this breakdown better, from like the camel to the lion to the child. And I think we've done a good job of sort of explaining the camel. And I got some people in the chat that are lining up to ask questions, but I'm going to get to you guys all over here in a second. I want to get through the whole mythology of it because I want people to begin to see these three different modalities, because I think it explains a better path through life. And so I'm going to move on to the next part. That was the camel.
May I have one more thing on the
yeah, go. Whatever you got.
The camel. Yeah, I think the camel is very much aligned with the term, the persona,
Okay.
right? So it's the mask that we put on for society. Yes. It's who we need to be, who we need to show up as we think we need to, based on the society structures. And it can be super liberating when it comes off. I can also tell you it's very confusing, and it can feel very almost frightening at first. Like you're almost in shock. Like there's a process of like that part of you that has to die, and there's a lot of confusion, there's grief, there's anger that has to go with that process of kind of letting that part of you release. And sometimes you want to hold on because you're afraid of who you are without it, and because you don't know who you are without it, there's a lot of like fear and confusion that can come with that experience. And like I said, I think what a lot of people may not even recognize is there's also this experience of anger and grief that may come with it, where you're angry at the system, or you're angry at people around you, and there's like this frustration almost at yourself too, like how could I be so silly for adopting that for so long. So there's this challenging, or maybe like bit of turmoil that some people can go through as well. And then I think it gets to this point of grief. But grief is a really beautiful emotion. While it's so challenging, it's an emotion that can bring you, if you fully allow it, it's an emotion that can bring you to the state of authenticity if you fully surrender to it. So it's kind of this path that can kind of bring you to that next phase of just becoming more of yourself. And you can kind of use those emotions, like the rage, the anger, the grief, to channel it into something positive. So you take those negative emotions, and you channel it into something constructive and positive to now create in a beautiful way.
That makes me think, I heard recently people, and I've been hearing this quite a bit lately, maybe it's just where I am, but when you talk about taking off the mask and you talk about sitting with grief, for me what comes up is like you begin to see the core wound that got you where you are. And you begin to see like, I've been protecting this core wound and using the anger, and I've been using the sadness to drive me. But when you really take off that mask and you sit in grief long enough, and it usually comes through tragedy, but when you can sit with that core wound long enough, you realize that, wow, this thing that I hated about myself, or this thing that was so unfair in my life, has been driving me. And for me, I start to think like, that's kind of impressive. Like, you've been using this wound, this thing that caused you so much pain, to drive you. And I think the transformation, at least for me, was like, okay, well, what if I use that wound not in a negative way, but
Yeah.
what if I use it in a positive way? What if I begin seeing this very core wound, the thing that I was trying to hide from everybody, but it was driving me? What if I let it shine? What does it look like if I look at it from another angle? What is it if I embody it? And for me, that core wound was like, from I am not important. I held on to this thing for so long, just trying to always make everyone happy and not show these things. And then all of a sudden I learned that core wound taught me that I am radical empathy. Like, I can identify with all these other people because I thoroughly understand on some level what they're going through, because I have sat with it for 40 years. Let me help other people start walking through it. And then you realize that core wound that you had begins to be this shining beacon that kind of lights the way for yourself and other people. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Well, then it's a beautiful way of expressing that like ultimately the process of alchemy, right? Because
Yeah.
when you're living through that wound, and this is shadow work, right? When you have this wound, and I dealt with it myself. I mean, the wound of just unworthiness and
Yeah, totally.
not being good enough. It made me so successful in my career because I always had to like just do more. I could never stop because it wasn't ever enough, because I had to do better. Even no matter how good I was doing, I needed to do better because it wasn't good enough for me, or what I perceived that other people thought of me. So when you're working out of that energy, that's an energy of fear, right? And that drains you, and it's an energy leak. And that negatively impacts you in so many ways. But then when you can shift and ultimately like alchemize that emotion into a different energetic state, then you can now use that, like you said, it moves from this, I guess, I don't want to keep using the word negative and positive, but it becomes this emotion that is draining, and it alchemizes into an emotion that is in alignment with your authenticity. And through that, you are now, to your point, you're shining, and you're filling yourself up. And now you're using an energy that is filling your cup and helping you to overflow, so you can give more and be more of yourself through that aspect of you, versus that same energy used in a different way or from a different place is something that drains and ultimately can sicken you and the people around you. So yeah, it's a beautiful way to kind of explain the alchemy of the shadow into a gift. And that's the process of just finding utilizing your creative faculties to find ways to, and you're being very creative by identifying that you are an empath, extremely empathetic, and to use that empathy in ways that can serve others. And that really is like one of the joys of being human, is the ability to create with something that you already have inside of you.
And it's so funny. It's so funny because this thing that you're holding on to that made you so sad, you just start seeing, like, the only thing left to do is laugh. Like, oh my God, that's so crazy, because you get past the anger. But I think it's a beautiful segue, as we're talking about that transition, to moving into the second part of the mythology, which is the lion. So I want everyone listening to this part, like the lion feels like freedom, like that rebellion, that roar. But we all get stuck there sometimes. I know that I do. Like, I feel like I'm still there sometimes. Like, this idea of rebellion is freedom, but it also kind of seems like a trap. So here's the second part, ladies and gentlemen. The second part is that the camel becomes the lion. In the solitude of the desert, the lion roars. It shatters the idols it once carried. It says, I will not obey. I will not kneel. The lion is the spirit of rebellion, the sacred no that cuts through illusion. It wages war against the great dragon called Thou Shalt. But rebellion too is a chain. The lion fights to be free, but it cannot yet create. It knows only how to destroy, but not yet how to dance. And when the lion's roar fades into a whisper, when all the dragons lie in dust, the final transformation waits. I think we've been talking about that segue into the lion, but maybe you can tell us a story about being the lion or your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do believe that the lion is that period of destruction and kind of the anger and the grief and that rage and that
Yep.
comes out through that process. Like, why was I doing that? Why did I listen to that? You know, whoever agreed? When did I ever agree to be
Yeah.
or to that rule? Like, whoever made that rule up, and why is that my rule that I have to listen to? So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, that's, I think it's I think when you're going into like a pretty big transition in your life, and especially if you're working with psychedelic medicine, there can be some pretty big transformational shifts that happen, since obviously it's a catalyst, kind of shift you into
Yep.
more awareness and consciousness. And I think that there's like these big overarching shifts that can happen where just everything gets shooken up and everything is now just in this kind of period of destruction. And that is that really challenging point where you just have to let these parts of you go and die and shed, and ultimately like create space for new. But I also think that where there's this kind of like overarching shift, you then have to go through these periods on all of these individual aspects of yourself, right? It's not just, I don't believe that like this flow is like just one and done. I believe that there's like overarching process that happens, but then it has to happen on each individual part of you that you have created as part of your persona. Because when we have our persona, there's various complexes that sit under that persona. And those complexes are ultimately energetic charges of comprised of different memories, experience, suppressed emotions. And now all of these complexes are going to be really angry that, you've had this experience and now you want to like let it all go. So now the ego comes in and those complexes really step forward and are like, I'm here to protect you. We're not doing that. I have built up a lot of walls here to protect this inner child, and we're not doing that. So it can be a very challenging time. And this is really the work of being with your shadows and going into your unconscious parts of yourself to identify these various complexes that ultimately need to be seen and need to be understood. And there's again like another kind of I'll say it again, alchemy process that has to happen with these, because they have built up these complexes or parts of you, if you're thinking more in the lines of IFS, have built up so much energy and guards around parts of you that have been wounded. So you can't go in it by force. So this process of like destruction happens, but then you need to find a different way to engage with these aspects of yourself, to have them feel safe enough to transition into like the next phase or different phases. So, I know specifically for myself, I have definitely been in a period for a number of years in working in the shadows, and it can be quite exhausting. There's a lot of different things. I think once you start to become conscious of them, of these different aspects of yourself, there's a lot of work to do. And it can be quite overwhelming, but at the same time, to our point earlier, it can also be quite liberating. And I always just encourage doing it very, with a lot of compassion for yourself and with a lot of grace with yourself, and to explore these different aspects.
Yeah. It sounds to me like, if I speak from personal experience, like that sort of rebellion, it just leads to the burning down of everything. For me, it manifested in like just rebelling as hard as I can at a place I worked for so long and just tearing everything down, like all the anger, all the emotions. I'm like, you know what? These guys are going to get it. Watch this. And you start doing these things. Like I would start speaking in front of like large groups, like a fiery speeches at a union hall. And it felt so good to get the recognition of people that were being unheard. And then that kind of feeds itself a little bit. Like all these people are like, yeah, I wish I would have said that. Or, hey, thanks for saying that. And then you learn that that sacred roar is so powerful. And for me, I got caught up in it. And I'm like, that's nothing. Watch this. And you just start roaring even louder, and you're like, this is crushing. This is so awesome. But then all of a sudden, comes the backlash. And then comes the people that are like, you fucking been talking way too much. Watch this. And then you start losing things and you learn, wow, that roar was powerful. That aggressive nature that I had, it felt really good, but there's a lot of damage that I did. And it's through that evolution of awareness, like I am powerful. That's amazing. I didn't know I was that powerful. But now you're set to rest in these ashes over here of what's left over. And that sort of, for me, that was like an evolution of awareness. Like I got to see the pain of it, but then I also got to see like this other side of it. And it sounds to me that that's what's kind of happening in this stage, is that your awareness is sort of growing bigger, and with the bigger awareness you see more good, but you also feel more pain on some level. Does that sound accurate to you?
Oh, yes, 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 yes. You have to experience it all. You have to feel it all. Because when you're not conscious of it, you're numbing it, right? You're kind of like,
Yeah.
you're aware of it, and it's driving you. Like, so to some degree, you're aware. That's why you're getting triggered really easy.
Yeah.
And now that you're aware of it, it's just like, what the hell? It, like, truly, it's just like, what the hell happened? Like, and I think that I was just listening to a really interesting podcast that a friend sent me called The Emerald. And it actually talks about the roar, and that we as a world are in this destruction phase. And it's been going on since, the period of COVID, really.
Right.
It's been this destruction of all of the systems that have been created. And, you can see it on the news, where it's just everything is so much destruction, right?
Yeah.
And because of this, there's this kind of like underlying war that is being built up in everybody, where everyone is so fed up. They're so frustrated, or so many people anyway are so frustrated with how things are going, and all of the pain that people are experiencing, and all of the suffering that is happening right now. And it's a lot of very pent up emotions. And these are not because it's happening across the world too. It's not only our emotions that we're tapping into, it's now like the collective emotions of everybody, of others that we're experiencing. And some of this is like quite ancestral, or like very deeply archetypal that we're experiencing. So there's this like upheaval now that is coming, that people are feeling, and it's really challenging energy for people to experience. So that's why a lot of people right now are really dealing with, like, almost like a confusion around how to handle all of the energies that they're feeling, all of the challenging emotions that they're feeling, because it's kind of to the point, because it's not just within an individual, it's very collective.
Yeah.
That we almost don't have a choice but to feel it. So it's even pushing it up for people that have been trying to suppress it and trying to avoid it. So there's this period of like, now, kind of the shadow of the world is coming through. But again, this is destruction, because it's breaking down the things that are antiquated and that are no longer for us. And that's why the work of shadow work and doing a very conscientious work of identifying these aspects of us are so important, because we need to gently and gracefully work with these aspects of us to understand them and help them transition. Because otherwise, like to your point, those parts of us can cause a lot of damage if they're not because they've been kind of like held down for so long, right? When you've been restrained, or parts of you have been restrained for so long, as soon as you break through the cage or the handcuffs, all of a sudden you're ready to rage. So this is kind of like this upheaval that is happening. It's really important that people start to do their inner work to explore these challenging emotions, so that they can support let's say a more gentle of these emotions, because to your point, they can be so beautiful, and they can be used for so much good. I'm going to totally butcher the story, but I'm going to totally butcher it, because somebody told me a while ago, now I can't remember, but there was a guy, there was a lot going on, and he was so fed up and so angry with what was happening in the world that he ended up, hopefully you'll know it and you can chime in, but he ended up creating this concert. I think it was at the Wimbledon Stadium maybe, but he created this concert, and he called all of these like amazing artists and said, hey, we're doing this concert here. And then he called the stadium or the location, said, hey, I have all these amazing artists that want to come and do this concert. And obviously he fed to both of them to bring them all together. And by doing so, they ended up raising so much money and awareness to really help this kind of like cultural shift that was needed at the time. So anyway, it's this process now of like, how do we take this anger and these parts of ourselves or whatever fear, whatever the emotion is that's coming through, and now channel it into something really powerful and really beautiful to help us shift into a better state and a better place. Not only like yourself, obviously you do the work on yourself first, but by doing that work, you can find now, okay, well, what is my unique gift that I can give to the world and give to others? And that's where the healing of not only yourself, but the community and the world starts to happen.
That's a beautiful story. I can't help but think like that's where we are now. And it's interesting to think about the collective versus the individual, because you're right. I see so much destruction out there. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I've seen that same level of destruction in my own story, where I am now, right after COVID. Like, it makes so much sense to see in yourself the frustrations of society all around you. Like, there's no avoiding it. No matter what you do, no matter what age you are, it's such a transition right now. And it is, I think a lot of people are worried about, like, there is lots of evidence, like, it's everywhere on TV, it's in the music, it's everywhere, to see this incredible uprising that's happening all around the world. There's riots going on everywhere, and maybe there've always been riots, but it seems elevated to me on some level to see the level of political chaos, to see societal chaos, to see financial chaos. Like, all these systems are just beginning to be broken down, but at the same time there's this new energy emerging. Like, there's like these whispers of like a golden age, and creators are starting to come out. Like, I talked to a guy yesterday, my friend Benjamin George. Ben, I love you, I hope you're out there listening. He's been creating so much now with different AI systems to put more beauty out into the world than he ever could have before. Like, it seems like technology is right at our fingertips. Like, yeah, I hear the chaos, but who amongst you is going to create? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's the medicine, right? That is the
It
medicine.
is.
Yeah, that is the medicine. So this is a time to create, and this is a time to, and like, I think so many people, they think of create, they just think of art, and it's like, oh, I'm not creative, I don't know how to do art, so I can't do this, but it's like, you that is this process of like, now going inwards and exploring what your unique gift is. And sometimes that is the process of going into the darkness in order to find out what lies underneath that. And once you can find out what your unique gift is, then it's your opportunity to kind of create this new version of yourself, this version of you that's able to express your gift and offer that in a way that is unique and ultimately creative to you, to your own authenticity. So everyone has a gift that they can offer to the world. I mean, literally everyone. And this is a very, very, very critical point in times where we have to find those gifts and then go share them. And I agree 100% that creation, especially, like, that is the medicine for depression. It's the antidote for anxiety. It's a really beautiful tool that we have, and actually that we're supposed to be using. But I think going back to like the first part of this talk, the Camel, we're so I guess kind of like structured into not creating. It's like, you have to abide by these rules, stay in boxes, stay in these lines, and do not color outside of the lines. So when we start to get to that point of like this itch to create or this itch to give, it feels so scary. And many of us have ancestral wounds too, where we were shunned or beaten or killed even for speaking or for creating or for showing up for the greater good. So there's a lot of like, not even just the stuff that we're dealing with, like of just coming into your own and how scary that can be, and then kind of putting it out there for all to see. But we also carry deeper patterns, ancestral patterns that make it even more challenging for us to step out, and especially during a very kind of like a time that is is quite unbalanced, and there's obviously a lot of turmoil going on. But that's, I think, where the power really starts to the power within you really needs to drive you, right? So you
Yeah.
can use that to and when I say power, it's like your own kind of like uniqueness ultimately,
Yeah.
and it's finding that inspiration within to just ultimately kind of be more of yourself for the world.
Yeah, I love that. It always seems to me like I was talking to Erin Raskin a while back, and she had mentioned to me something about tragedies. And when I think about, the collective tragedies that are happening right now or just in our personal lives, they seem to be portals. They seem to be the only way that you can get to the truest version of yourself. And you wouldn't wish these tragedies on anybody, whether you lost somebody you love, or you lose something in life, or you just have so much stress on you, you end up with this crushing anxiety or depression. But all of these seem to be portals to a better version of yourself. They seem to take you through the dark, where all that's left is the light inside of you. And until you recognize it, until you recognize in the darkness that this thing that's lighting you up is your gift to share with other people. Like it seems like a portal to me. What are your thoughts when I say portals and tragedy?
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. So I feel like there's like kind of two, I don't know if the portal is the same or they're different, but there's this
Yeah.
portal tragedy that kind of like shakes your world up, right?
Yeah.
It's something so destructing in your life happens that
Yep.
everything falls apart. And, sometimes like, whether it's a sickness, a crisis, whatever it might be, it is something that happens so that everything that you've built or everything that you've kind of set up in the structure around you has to fall. You have to now kind of shed and crumble parts of you that have been so close to you for so long. And then I think after that, there's this portal of fear, right?
Mm.
And the fear is such a powerful portal. And it is just stepping into the unknown, really. And I know for a fact from my own experience, and I just
Yeah.
100% to be true or know it to be true, that every time you step through that portal of fear, there's something beautiful on the other
Mm.
side. But it is so scary to walk through that portal. But I know every time that I did, it has been some of the most challenging times in my life. Even like the littlest ones are like, it just feels so overwhelming to the point where it's almost like paralyzing that I can't do it. But once I do, everything opens up on the other side. And it's just this, like, you step into like another world once you walk through this portal of a fear that you've held on to for so long. So yeah, I definitely believe in these portals that take you into like another version of yourself, another version of like your consciousness and your experience in life.
It's so true. Like it feels like part of you is dying, and that's what's so scary. Is like part of you is going to like walk through this thing. Imagine knowing I'm gonna walk through this thing, and part of me is going to die. Like for me, that's where the fear comes from. Because once you get close enough to it, like like I'm gonna kill this part of me, and like that's such a powerful thing to say. Like it's almost suicidal in a way. And I'm not suicide. I'm not talking about that aspect of suicide where I want anybody to think about that or do that, but on the context of imagine killing an old part of yourself so that a new part of yourself can grow. Like you have the dagger in your hand. You must do this in order to grow. Like that's so frightening. And speaking of incredible, powerful people that know exactly what I'm talking about, I want to bring in my friend Jesse Monreal over here. Jesse, I love what you're doing. Powerful speaker. If you're checking out this podcast right now, you should click on her link. Jesse Monreal, incredible individual. She says, unfortunately, I think it's so easy to throw your hands up and take a borderline nihilistic view on the state of the world. But at the end of the day, the more people who do that, the more it comes true. It's not only hard to try and create and contribute, but it feels useless and pointless. But it's truly the only thing that will save not only you, but those around you. And the more of us who do it, the more it pushes against the darkness. This is coming from true experience. Jessica's got an incredible story, but what do you think about that, Jessica? What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that's kind of the where a lot of people are at. It's like it feels like, why there's nothing to do, why bother, right? It's like feels
Yes.
so there's a sense of hopelessness. I think when we
Yeah.
get into such an intense state of crises, there is a sense of hopelessness, and it's very understandable, right? And that is coming where you have to kind of come into this inner power that you have, and just take it into your own hands and just say like, okay, whether it is or isn't, it's still something that I need to do. It's still something like if you can contribute anything to this world, it is taking care of yourself and becoming the best, most authentic version of yourself, that and finding your unique gifts and then offering them and shining and bringing them out to the world is literally is the best thing that you can do. And you know, I encourage people that are struggling with everything that's going on in the world to maybe like use that as motivation to say like, okay, well, if I don't know like exactly what my unique gifts are, because sometimes that's kind of like confusing to figure out too, you know. A lot of times it's hard to even recognize what they are. But if you could at least say, okay, well, what can I offer to this situation? And even if it's something as simple as like creating a picture and putting it out for someone to see beauty, or kind of like creating a small little gathering within your little block, and just bringing people together so that they can experience a relief from what is going on, and some sense of like joy in being in community. Gathering people together is obviously super important right now because people are feeling very disconnected, very alone. So there are so many things that people can do where they may think it's nothing and it like could mean the world to somebody. And that one little thing could just transform that person to go do something, you know, through themselves. And it's also very rewarding when you kind of take action on something. Again, even if it feels so small to you, you have no idea who it's benefiting and who it's impacting. Not only yourself, because now you're using that, you're kind of transforming something that's a challenging energy into something that's a higher vibrational state, but it's also helping the others around you because now they get to engage in some sort of beauty. Because what we need right now is beauty, and I don't mean physical beauty. I mean the beauty of offering aspects of yourself, and the beauty of just seeing, you know, nature, seeing something that's not trauma or not crises. Something as simple as just like creating a sense of joy for somebody, or like even just like being really nice to people or really kind. I mean, that's a superpower right there, is kindness, especially when we're in a time of everyone's so overwhelmed, so stressed. Like literally somebody's superpower could be kindness, and that spreading kindness around the world right now like could do wonders, you know, and finding new ways to kind of show up and be kind to people. So I think it's honestly like simple things that people have and possess within them that can really be transformative in ways that they don't even know.
That's so beautiful. Like when I hear that, it makes me think that we're moving away from transactions into being. You know what I mean by that? Like for so long, we have had this transactional economy where like, okay, like I do this and I get paid that. Therefore, that's what I'm worth. But when you spoke earlier, and what Jesse's comment was alluding to me, is that it's so easy to get stuck in this nihilistic idea. Like, who fucking cares? Like, it doesn't matter. But that is such a bullshit story. It does matter. Every single action matters. And when you do it with intention, when you get to this idea where you're doing it right now, like just having a conversation with someone, or maybe you're in a state where you're not feeling good, but you go out and you talk to someone and you share a story with them and you see their eyes light up and you realize that the contagious nature of your kindness has left you and entered somebody else, and now it's radiating outwards. And then you get this epiphany of like, oh my God, I feel great. I've had it all along. This thing that I was worried about, like this thing that I didn't know, like just being me, just going out and sharing something with somebody, it radiates outwards and it's beyond transactional. It's something that we all have and that we can all give at any time as long as we're willing to see that creativity. And then for me, that's where the beauty comes in. Like, oh my gosh, you don't need that transactional idea. And I think we're breaking that habit. We've been conditioned our whole lives to see ourselves as a transaction, what we're worth because of what we do, what we're worth because of what someone is willing to pay us. But that is not a value in some of it. Value is so much bigger than that. When you begin to understand that, you realize how valuable you are, and you can make yourself better from that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah. I think that we are almost programmed, like unconsciously, that we're not worthy or we're not of value.
Yeah.
And even like think about Instagram or LinkedIn. I mean, all of it as helpful as it can be. It's also tools that just continue to play on insecurities and make you just unconsciously compare yourself to others and to feel unworthy or less than, just because of what other people are presenting through social media, or how people are presenting themselves, or how people look, or what they're doing, whatever it might be. And there's just like it's this constant loop, a feedback loop, if you're not like conscious of it, that could be like playing underneath it all, just showing you or perceiving, you may be perceiving it as not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And I think that's something that's kind of like programmed very early on in life, when we're getting compared in grades, and if we're good enough in school, and how we rank in class. You just carry that pattern out in life, in all aspects, whether it's what you're paid, or what your job is, or what your car you drive is, or what your house is, or where you live, or what you're posting on social media, or how someone else is showing up, or like physical appearance, all of these different things. And it's exhausting. And it really is about finding your own like innate worth in a way that's not comparable. Like there's no comparable value that you can put on it to somebody else, because it's innately yours. And we all have an innate worth that we carry. And it's a matter of just like honoring and appreciating ours, as well as honoring and appreciating everyone else's.
Yeah. Chains of comparison. It's everywhere around us.
Yeah.
It's so hard to break. Especially sometimes you'll get into those conversations, or you'll be at the party where you're like, I really don't want to be here. And everyone is just comparing and measuring themselves. And it's like, so what do you do? What do you mean, what do I do? Let me tell you what I do. I got a laundry list of things I do. But it's so interesting to think about that move from comparison into compassion. And I hope more people choose to do it. I think it's a good segue here for the third part of this mythology, where the lion becomes the child. So the lion becomes a child, not a child of ignorance, but a child of power. The child plays, the child creates. The child says a sacred yes to life. It builds new worlds with laughter. It dances with the chaos the lion once feared. It is innocence reborn through wisdom, playfulness crowned by courage. The child does not seek to conquer life. It seeks to co-create with life. What comes to your mind when we start talking about this transition?
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, this is the journey of individuation, in Jungian speak, and it's the process of like self-realization, of just fully allowing yourself to live and experience life in the present now. That's what kids do. They don't have all of those different like structures and things placed on them, or they haven't accepted them already, I should say. And because of that, they're able to just like live so freely and abundantly, in a way of like curiosity and excitement. It's like everything is new, everything is exciting, everything is something to learn and experience. And I think over time we just get like so like bogged down and exhausted, and that's kind of like that transition of like that you grow up, right? And then you get to a certain point where it all breaks, and then you have like all of the grief, the anger, the shadow, but then you have to start to come out of that. You have to start to come up for air, and you have to start to be able to like look for things that can bring you joy, and look for things that can bring you experiences of happiness. We literally have to create it. We have to create our own happiness. And happiness, it's an emotion, right? It's fleeting, so it's not going to be there all the time. But like this world of curiosity, I think that we have to come into in order to heal ourselves is so incredibly important on this process of individuation, because it's where we can breathe again. It's where we can like be ourselves again. It's where we can start to create from. And it's really, it's something that I've actually been working on. I mentioned I've been very much like in the shadows for quite some time, and it gets extremely overwhelming, and really can pull you down, and you have to learn how to come out of it. Step out of it and go back in to do the work. Step out of it and go back into to do the work. And right now, where I'm at is like really just like taking a step out for an extended period of time, because I need to create this kind of like pattern of play, and this pattern of experiencing positive emotions, and seeing things, always looking for something, the silver lining, the positive, looking around for beauty everywhere I'm at, because it's refreshing, right? And it's like this drink of water and hydration that I've needed for so long. So I believe that this is like the medicine that people really need right now, is to, like, amidst all of the chaos that is going on, to find the beauty in the world, and to find the beauty in people, and what people have to offer, and in nature and everything around us, because it's there. We have just been so, if you think about like programming,
Yeah.
everything we see on the news is bad, and so much that we see on social media is bad, and so much that people are going through right now is challenging. Everything around you is pulling you down, and it's kind of like this negative vortex. So you have to, and this vortex is like, it's like quicksand, right? It
Yeah.
really pulls you down. So you have to be the one that is actively pulling yourself out by searching for things that can make you happy, or bring you joy, or find play, or creation. And it is an active choice that you have to make. And it's not always easy. It can feel like a lot of work. And you're like, well, this isn't supposed to be work. It's supposed to be play. But that's the process of making it more natural, because we've forgotten it. So you have to make it more natural by doing it intentionally, even if it feels like it's challenging, even if it feels like I even know, like, people, when they do it, they'll start to experience guilt and shame for doing it, because other people are suffering, or they've been in that state for so long that it feels scary to be out of, like, the negative state, or a lower emotion. It's scary almost. Like, what's going to happen, what's going to happen next. And you don't want to feel that fall from this one state of happiness to the state of sadness. So it's almost where people would rather be in a place that they've been in for so long habitually, because they know it, right? It's
Yeah.
known for them. And when they step out into this other place, even if it feels good, it almost feels like a very scary place to be, because you're not used to it, and you're just like, how long until something crumbles, right? So it's a process that you have to intentionally do over and over and over again, until it starts to become more of your normal state of experienced.
It's so well said. It does, for me, and I think a lot of people listening to this, like, it feels foreign. Like, what do you mean I feel great and I'm not worried about all these problems over here? Like, what, like, that sort of freedom is itself scary. But I like the idea of having to work with it and understand, like, this is my new state. And it reminds me of psychedelic journeys, because you take these big dose journeys, and for a while you escape all of the negative feedback loops, or you escape all of the mundane life that you're normally surrounded in, and you get high. You get to look down and see everything that's happening, and you realize, oh, it's just part of the process. It's not that big of a deal. But then when you come down from the trip, now you're back on the road walking again, and you tend to forget, unless you can maintain that connection to the higher self, or maintain that connection. And for me, that's how I think psychedelics should be done. Like, yeah, look, you get to go up to the top of the mountain and look down at the route every now and then. You get to see the boulders, you get to see the where the cliff drops off. But then you got to go back down there and hike it and remember that. And it's so easy. A lot of people get caught up in, like, well, I just want to be on the mountaintop. Like, you can't stay up there. Like, you get to go up there and look, but you can't stay up there, because you're not doing anything. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's it. The
Mhm.
human experience, right? We are going to, no matter how much we work to stay in this, to get into the state of peace and happiness and
Yeah.
joy, like, that's not the full human experience. And eventually, like, if you're just in that state all the time, like, it'll I don't want to say it'll get a little boring, but
Yeah.
it's you're not feeling the fullness of it, right? Because the
Right.
fullness of it, experience the fullness of it through duality, right? So you
Mm.
experience the fullness of joy, and the experience of happiness, and the experience of peace through the duality of its opposites. So this fluctuation that we go through in the human experience is actually normal, and I would say to some degree important for you to experience the fullness of it. And I think that this kind of, like, practice of coming into the state is really what will help you find ways to continue to get there. And I believe you
Yeah.
can do that through finding creative practices that light you up, and that could be drawing, it could be painting. Like, for me, it's dancing. I absolutely love to dance, and it just, like, lights me up, and it's something that I forgot how much I love it, and how much it's a core part of my being. But so it's finding these aspects of yourself through play that you can tap into when you're in these states and you need that medicine, because it is medicine, right? Dance is medicine, music is medicine, art is medicine, creating is medicine. So it's finding, even photography, like whatever it might be, it's finding your unique medicine, that you have this kind of like medicine kit that you can come to. So when you get into these states, based on whatever happens in your life, you can go to these different tools, if you will, to find and experience the healing that you need, and to remember who you are outside of that kind of like vortex of challenging emotions that we can get sucked into. And like, I love what you said about the psychedelic journeys. Like, I believe oftentimes when you are experiencing that state of oneness or that state of joy or peace, that's a remembering of who you are inside. And of course it amplifies it. So it amplifies it pretty intensely. But it does so that you can remember who you are. I remember when I was dealing with anxiety and panic disorder in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with panic disorder through a challenging relationship that I got out of. And the only place I felt safe was in my car driving. That was the only place that I could feel safe. So when I went to therapy and to try to work on it, she did a body scan for me. And when she did the body scan, I was like, oh my God, like it took me a few sessions to even be able to close my eyes and do it, because I was scared. I just was not in a place of trust. And when I finally like actually did it, I was like, oh my God, what is this feeling? And she's like, Jessica, this is what you should feel like all the time. But I was in such a state of panic and anxiety all the time that was my new normal. I mean, I was having nightmares all the time. So that was my normal state. So I forgot what it felt like to be somebody else. And that's what these emotions that end up turning into what we would call diagnoses or conditions, they're ultimately just like vortex states of emotion that we get sucked into because we forget, because we've also almost like disconnected from those aspects of us that can feel other emotions like joy, peace, happiness.
I love it. Like, I love the word remembering. Like, it speaks to me of neuroplasticity. It speaks to me of recreating yourself in a way that's positive, or remembering, like when you put things back together in a way. And that to me is what happens on some of these journeys. And what you explained is you get a chance to reconfigure yourself in a way that is whatever you want it to be, because you can change your memories. Like, you can add new awareness to that memory and be like, well, it wasn't my fault when this thing happened, and now you remember it a different way, and that allows you to move forward in a way with more abilities and more awareness that you didn't know before. So when we remember things, we get an opportunity to go back and fix things that happened in time, which it's pretty miraculous when you start to think about your ability to do that and to remember what it's like to be whole, to remember what it's like to feel joy. And in some ways, I think that gives you the opportunity to be in that state. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's mind blowing. Yeah, go ahead.
it's almost it's soul retrieval, right? Because if there's
Yeah.
different aspects of you got lost in a period of time that you've been so fragmented from, that you forget what they feel like to be like that. And I think as you do work and you start to kind of like undo some of the patterns and work on some of the traumas and become more conscious and more aware, you can start to there's work that you can do to actually like go do physical soul retrieval to bring those fragmented parts back to you. But I think as you move forward in your journey of healing, like I know that I've gotten a glimpse of like who I was in high school, and there was such an innocence that I carried, such like a loving, trusting, almost like maybe naive innocence that I carried, but that was like really beautiful. And then that part of me, I totally shut off, and it's been a process to allow her to come alive again within me, and to be able to feel safe to come alive again and live through me, because that part of me really got tucked away in another place in the unconscious world, because it didn't feel safe to live or to be in a relationship again. So it's been quite a journey to bring her back, but it was such a beautiful experience to remember her And like, I encourage everybody to like think about who you were in different aspects of your life. Who were you before a trauma happened? Who were you before an experience happened? Who were you before you got overwhelmed with stress? Who were you before you took on a certain career that maybe like hasn't felt very fulfilling? And remember those parts of you. And that's part of this process that you can do on your own, of just remembering that, and really try to get in touch of that part of you. Even journal, like, well, who was I? Like, what did I feel? What did I do? How did I live? How did I show up in the world? How did I present myself in community? How did I feel? Like, what was I doing for activities? And just like exploring those parts of you is also a way to remember and start to then kind of bring them alive again, awaken those parts of you. You can kind of connect to those parts of you again. And then it's this process of then integrating that in a way that's like, letting that part of you know you're safe. I've learned through that experience, I'm not going to let that happen again, to kind of like really allow it to integrate back into you.
That's such awesome advice. Where were you and who were you the last time you really felt love? Like, if you can just start there, then you can get back to that part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's super helpful for me. Like, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I got you ready for some questions. We got some questions stacking up in the chat over here. Thank you to everybody who's been so patient. My friend Maya in Austin, she says, if the hero's journey is dead, who's writing the next myth?
That's great.
Thanks, Maya.
Yeah, I'd love to write one at some point. That'd be pretty cool.
Aren't you writing one right now?
Yeah, I think we all are. I think we're recreating history right now. And I think there's definitely parts of the hero's journey that we'll pull into it. I think all of this is kind of like learning and then kind of like recreating it. But I think we're creating it together. I do. I think that we're creating it together, and then at some point somebody's kind of look at everything that's happened in the full transition and be like, oh wow, this was a massive like change, and like it correlated to this, and put it out very eloquently. So I think it's something that we are creating together, and yeah, I'm excited to see it.
I love that. And I think it adds some power to people out there that might be feeling like what they're doing isn't making a difference, or they feel like they're not being seen. Like, we're all co-creating together. And when people go and look back on this time in history, they're gonna like, look at all these people that individually found a way to give to the whole. Like, I think that is going to be what people look on. I think we're writing that, like you said, we're writing that myth right now, and we don't know the end because we're right in it. Like, you can't, if you're a character in a story, you don't know the end of it, but you know what your part is. And maybe your part is whatever you're doing right now. Like, you're doing it right now. Whatever your part is, you're doing it right now. If you want a bigger role, just step into the bigger role. But I think we all are co-creating. That was an awesome question, Maya.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And just remember, those things, like even just like creating a garden and putting like beautiful flowers out front so somebody can look at it and be like, oh, it's so beautiful. Like littlest things that you can do. Every little thing that you do, like to create beauty, is beneficial. So like, never think that you're not doing enough by doing something, even like the smallest thing, because it's not small.
It's not. And I love the idea of a garden. When I was in Hawaii, when I got my house over there still, but I had like this rad shamanic garden where like I planted ayahuasca. I planted all like psychotropic viridis. I planted like all these mushrooms. I had like the sickest shamanic garden in the world out there. And I had to leave, but like in my mind, I was like, you know what? Somewhere somebody is going to find this. And maybe this ayahuasca vine grows 1,000 years. And like, who knows? It's because I planted it over there. It's like you're always giving back. And like, the idea of the garden is so amazing. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Clint Kyles. If you guys are hanging out with us, Clint Kyles has an amazing podcast. Check him out on YouTube. Check him out on Spotify. But he says Doc Askins wrote the sequel. We got to get Doc back on here to talk about it. But let me shout out to Sophia. Sophia from Vancouver. She says, if we're not here to fix ourselves, what are we here to build?
That's right. I mean, that's a great you have to start with yourself. They always say, like, if you're in a relationship, the best thing you can do for the relationship is work on yourself, right? Yeah. And I want to encourage too, like fixing ourselves, to always look at it as a positive way, in a positive reframing. Like, how are we just coming back to ourselves? Like, really is what it is. Like, how are we coming back to the truest nature of ourselves? And by coming back to the truest nature of yourself, that's where you're able to be like the truest expression of who you were meant to be and what you're meant to offer in this world. So yeah, by doing that, that's really what that's really how you're helping to heal yourself, your friends, your family, your community, the greater world, really.
Yeah. And I think so many of the problems we fix in ourselves allow us to become someone who can fix those broader problems in life, because it's starting off small. Like, you learn to fix it in yourself, and then that allows you to see it somewhere else. You're like, oh, I know how to fix this. So, like, by fixing it in yourself, you do become a builder of sorts, a builder of community, a builder of relationships, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah,
um
absolutely. I'm super grateful for all of the experiences that I've had. Like,
yeah,
even they've been so dark and so challenging sometimes. Like, without going through them, I wouldn't be able to share information that might help others through that
yep,
experience. So it's definitely something that I think if you can again do that reframing and say, like, well, yeah, it's shitty that happened, but at the same time, now look how stronger I've become and look who I've become because of it. And then I think you also start to like draw people towards you that you may be able to help through that experience.
yeah, it's really well said. That's why sharing things that are vulnerable, that like you might feel shame for, and maybe they are shameful, but if you can find the courage to get that out there where other people can heal, like, maybe that, I like to think of it like this, like, we're talking to younger versions of ourselves all the time by sharing the things that were painful for us. And if you do that, you might help someone where you were 10 years ago get through it faster. And in a
Yeah.
way, that's giving back to yourself. Like, that's giving back to community. And it could just be a simple conversation. It could be journaling, or it could be going out and having that conversation with someone in a coffee shop or something like that. It's profound to think about how our experiences radiate outwards if we're willing to share them.
Yeah, I mean, that's been so much of my healing journey too. Is like when I just didn't know what to do. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember being like the concept of self-love. I remember Googling, like, how do you love yourself? Like, I had no idea at that point, it just was such a foreign concept to me. And I went on, social media, and I started to explore like self-love, hashtag self-love. And then I started to like listen, and I had gotten out of a number of bad relationships at that point. So it was really like damaging. And yeah, it was, I had learned so much from listening to other people's experiences, and I'm so grateful for their vulnerability and for putting that out there, because I just gained so much wisdom and knowledge and ways to do my own inner healing by listening to people's experiences. And even if they didn't like share like the fix, right, or
Right.
the tool, just the fact that they were sharing what had happened to them, to know like it wasn't just me,
Yeah.
that alone was medicine. So, I shared this with you, but like one of the things that I've been working on in the shadow is like the fear of being seen. And it has been, oh my God, so hard to get on podcast and then share the podcast for so long. It's been quite the journey. I remember the first one I did, I didn't tell anyone I was going on it. I never shared it because I was so scared. And but then it kind of got into this point where it's just like, I have been helped by so many people by them sharing their stories. And I wanted to be able to share my experiences as well, because perhaps that might help people on their journey. And it was just something that I had to like kind of continue. I think I'm still in that portal of fear that I'm working through, but it's been, it's been quite the experience. And I think it's so important.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Noah from Brooklyn says, "Are we addicted to being lions because we fear becoming children?"
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's this, it's kind of like that pattern that I talked about where,
Yeah.
you, the fear of unknown, even if that
Yes.
unknown can feel good at times, because it's something unknown is so scary. for people, and it's so scary just in general until you get comfortable with it, that it's easier to stay in a state of emotions that are more familiar to you. So even if the feeling of grief or sadness or anxiety or fear or anger, whatever terms you want to use for it or vocabulary you want to use for it, because it's known, it's more comfortable to stay in that state. And again, you kind of you can get swallowed up in these emotions too. Like, remember, emotions are really like energetic charges, and the more energy and thoughts we give to them, the more power we give to those energetic charges, those emotions, and they really can become complexes. So we have to be careful within that state of the lion, because you can get swallowed up in it. You can get swallowed up in those emotions and those experiences and those stories, and you're oftentimes like looking backwards, right? So when you're looking backwards or you're looking at the current state, it's hard to pull yourself out. And that's why there's this process of really like dipping your toe into the state of being a child. And like I said, when you do, there's so much like guilt and shame that you can experience, and fear that you can experience when you do so, that you're just like waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, when's it all gonna break? When's it all gonna fall down again? And like, it's always like, the feeling of heartbreak or loss is worse than like staying in that state of anger. So even though stepping into that like child could feel good, you don't want to experience the heartbreak, because you don't want to get hurt again, right? You don't want to get let down again. And there's just like, for me anyway, when I was doing a lot of work coming into it, which I've been doing for years now, I just remember being scared when I felt that way, like scared, like when am I going to get the call that something happened to someone got sick, or someone got like hurt, or something bad is going to happen. I was just like waiting for it to happen. And I just had to get comfortable getting into that state, and just knowing, and this is one of the things that helped me, is knowing that, look, I've done so much work at this point, and I've experienced so much, and I've gotten out of all of these traumatic experiences, and I'm here now. So whatever does happen, I'm going to be able to get through it. And I have more awareness and knowledge and wisdom now, that I can take care of myself in a different way, so that I'm not going to go back into that traumatic state or that PTSD experience or that like really kind of like challenging emotion. I have enough wisdom and tools now that I can step into the state of the child, step into the state of courage, of creativity, of joy, and know that if something does happen, and to just be comfortable that it is going to be fleeting, and there is going to be ups and downs, but to know that if anything does happen, that I have enough support and tools now to handle it differently, so I'm not going to experience it in a way that is so damaging as it was before. So I think we have to like find that strength within ourselves, and we just have to start to like become our parents. Stepping into the child requires you to now be your parent, the parent that you kind of always needed. Our parents obviously did the best they could, but there was always things that we needed that maybe we didn't get. So it's remembering what we needed, so that way when you step into the child and something does happen, you're now the parent that you always needed, and you can take care of yourself no matter what happens. And that's just finding a certain level of trust within yourself. That's really important in that third stage.
Yeah, that's really well said. It makes me think. You know what, Noah, since you're from Brooklyn, that reminds me of, there was a great movie called A Bronx Tale. And in that Bronx Tale, it was about this young kid that had, his dad was like a bus driver, but he was a friend of the mob boss. And the kid asked both of them, and I'll put this question to you, Jessica, and to you, Noah, because you're from Brooklyn. The kid asks the mob boss, is it better to be loved or feared? And so, like, for those that know the movie, like, it's a pretty cool scene right there. But what do you think, Jessica? Like, when we look at today's world of power, and like, you've been in the corporate world, I've been in the corporate world, and I know people right now that love to be feared. Like, they love having that ability to instill fear in others. But it seems so sort of destructive in a way. Like, but what do you think? Was it better to be loved or better to be feared?
I want to find a different.
Okay.
What is the word I'm looking for? Because like, I don't know, you can see people be loved in a way that's not coming from, they're loved as though they're on a pedestal. You can celebrities and stuff like that.
Like
And again,
sycophants.
Yeah, and then that puts people in a state of not being good enough when they're loving from that place. And if you're feared, obviously you're doing something that's having control over people. So I wonder if a better word is respected,
Mm,
or just
yeah.
appreciated, for who you are. Um, maybe it's a word, a softer term, just to show like appreciation for someone, or respect for someone, and who they are. Of course, it's great to be loved. Yeah, I think you just want to make sure that the people are coming from that place, in a place that is full and authentic, and not from a place of lack, because that takes power away from them.
Yeah, it's really well said. And maybe loved and feared is too, it's not nuanced enough. Like those are two giant, broad, sweeping terms that can mean so many different things. But it's a cool movie. Everybody should check it out. Who do I got over? I got Dante from Chicago, and he says, if the hero's journey ends with mastery, what begins with innocence?
I think you're coming back to innocence in a way. I do
Yeah,
think coming back to innocence. I mean, that's like it's a different form of innocence, though. I found myself coming back to a bit of innocence, because you get jaded through
yeah.
life, and you really do, right? But
Yes.
innocence is not, if you're innocence in a way that's not naive to the point where you're going to get hurt again. You're using innocence to look at the world from a new lens. You're using innocence in a way, that again comes with curiosity, and trust, and acceptance of people, of things, of experiences. So I think that you're almost kind of like coming back to innocence. And I don't know, maybe people might not connect with that, because when you think of master, you're thinking like strong and powerful, and innocence to a lot of people is weak. But I think there's like innocence equates to vulnerability, and vulnerability, I think, equates to authenticity. And authenticity is just on some charts, is the highest state of being. Some will say it's enlightenment, but others will say it's authenticity. So I think that I think there's like a purity to innocence, right? And if you're getting
Yeah.
to a state of mastery, you also have to get to a state of purity. And I think that, when I was thinking back to versions of myself, there was a purity, before things happened, and parts of me got jaded. So it is coming back to the pureness, so that you can have pure thoughts, and pure emotions, and do things through this pureness. And again, I do correlate pureness to some degree with innocence. So yeah, I think it's at the beginning. And again, there's this process of getting jaded, and suppression that happens, and then anger that happens, and then kind of like the lifting of it all, and then that's kind of coming back to that essence, if you will.
Yeah, it's well said. It's the older I get, the more I realize I don't know anything. So when I start thinking of, like you start getting deep into these things, you're like, yeah, I know this, and then you're like, wait a minute, I don't know, and this doesn't. Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. I wonder how many masters are out there that are like, I'm not a master. I don't even like that term. Don't call me a master. It's almost a trap to be called that.
Yeah, how can you be a master? I mean, they're like, you're never gonna know. You're never gonna know everything, and everything like, you don't really know. Like, you're always gonna learn more about it, and more that you don't know. So I don't know, the whole term like master. I mean, you're working towards mastery of something. So I totally
Right.
understand that, or mastery of like a skill of a sport, or
Yeah.
mastering yourself.
Yeah.
Mastering your emotions. So there definitely is like this. I think mastery is more of like an action. You're working to
Yeah.
master something. But yeah, I mean, we don't really know anything, right? 'Cause we really don't, and like the more you learn, the more you're like, wow, there's more I just don't know. Every time I get into like a higher state of consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, like the more I like open myself up and learn more, I'm like, wow, there's so much I don't know. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's exciting too at the same time.
It
It's
is.
fascinating.
Yeah. My advice to all the listeners out there, or anybody within the sound of my voice, is be weary of the person that says that they know what's going on. Like that person, that should be a red flag. Like, I know what's happening. Okay, I'll listen to you, but be weary of someone who's like, I know exactly what it is. Like that sounds to me like a road to destruction right there. But
Also, like you have to think like you can't. You can maybe know something from your perspective.
right,
You like everyone has a different
right,
experience. Everybody's living their own experience, which is
yes,
a combination of like their lived experiences, their ancestral stuff, their stage, their environments, the people in their life. So like you and one other person, even if you're literally living together, you're going to have totally different experiences and like truths, I guess relative truths you would call it, but you're going to have totally different what you would call a truth in something, because it's a different truth for one person versus the other person, because it's a different perspective and experience based on like where they're coming from. And yeah, I think that's sometimes hard for people to see and understand. But,
it's super hard to realize that two things can be true at the same time. Like
yeah.
these are both true. Like what do you mean they're both true? They can't both. Yeah, both things are true at the same time. And I think when you get there, like that's when some real questions start to go. And for me, like when I realize, well, both of these things are true. Like what does that mean if they're both true? It's like a true paradox. Like, but I think that that's where your awareness begins to grow. I got Aria from Seattle. She says, when you stop slaying dragons, what do you do with them?
Oh,
That's a
well.
good question. Thank you, Aria.
I love the concept of the dragon being the shadow,
Okay.
and the shadow ultimately just needs to be alchemized. So if you think of like, if you ever watch Game of Thrones, right, the dragon can be destructive and fire, and it's obviously like burning everything down, but then it can also be like a very extremely loving creature that has so many like emotions and such a big heart, and wants to like give and love to its little, I don't know, dragon creature babies. Yeah, I think that we just see the dragon as like this thing of destruction and death. And yes, that's an aspect of it, but it always, everything always has another side to it. And
Yeah.
it can also be a very beautiful creature, that just somebody really pissed her off. Now
Yeah.
she's burning everything down. She has to take matters into her own hands. So yeah, I think that the dragon, you make friends with the dragon, and you learn how the
Yeah.
dragon can be your protector and your guide, and even a mentor to some degree. So you befriend the dragon, you work with the dragon, so now it's on your team, and it's not controlling your life, but it's actually now an ally in your life.
That's such beautiful. It's so beautiful to put it that way. I remember when my daughter was young, she had trouble sleeping for a while and I'm like, "What's going on, love? Are you all right?" And she's like, "Dude, there's a monster in my closet, Dad." And I'm like, "What? No way." And so we went over there and we checked everything out. And she goes, "Well, it comes when you're gone." And I'm like, "I know. Can I tell you about this monster though?" And she's like, "What?" I'm like, that monster is not here to get you. That monster is there to protect you. And it hides in there. So if anybody comes in this door, that monster is your friend. He's going to attack the person that comes in. Like he's going to protect you. And if you can make friends with him, and all you have to do is just start talking to him, just start asking him his name and asking him what he does. And like, you'll make friends with him and he'll be like your best friend. He's not here to get you. I promise you, he's not here to get you. He's here to protect you. And like, it was so awesome. Like I get stoked when I think about it because like it totally turned the relationship. Like all of a sudden it was like, yeah, you're right. He is my friend, Dad. And then all of a sudden she's telling me about the conversation she has with him, and it's so cool. So my Arya, I think that you make friends, much like Jessica said, you make friends with that dragon. Like if you slay the dragon, it's not so much as killing him as it is, like Jessica said, alchemizing it and realizing that dragon's part of you. It's there to protect you.
I love
Beautiful.
that. I love that you did with your daughter, though. That's the process of shadow work, truly. Yeah. It's like you can apply that to so many things in life, right? Like you can literally apply that to like everything that you're experiencing. Like how can you take that you're looking at as something so negative and so like scary? How can you now try to have a different perspective around it and be able to like shift it or alchemize it into something that feels better by looking at it from a different perspective? And that's where like, kind of being your own parent can help, because when the parent comes in and they say, oh, well, what if you looked at it this way instead of that way? And you're like, okay, you need to be that for yourself.
Yep. It's so true. It's so true. We got some more questions. Jessica, you okay on time?
Mhm.
Okay, yes. All right. Ezra from Toronto, thank you for being here. I hope your day is going beautiful. Sending you light and blessings. Ezra says, if suffering speaks in symbols, how do we learn to listen?
Suffering speaks in symbols. How do we learn to listen? Oh, I love this question. Okay. So, well, I think that you can work with yourself because the psyche ultimately speaks to you in symbols and images, right? So, if you are experiencing suffering, which, many of us, all of us to some degree are, you can very much work with your psyche, because your psyche always wants to communicate with you, but obviously it can't do so through words. So it does so through images, through experiences like synchronicities, through dreams. Dreams are such a powerful way that your psyche is trying to communicate with you through symbols and images. So there's a lot of work that you can do, and this is the work that I do in Jungian coaching, or that you can do with any Jungian analyst, where it's kind of bringing some sort of like dilemma or challenge to the table, something that you want to work through. And in that experience, you can then come up with you dig a little bit deeper into the dilemma, and then you allow yourself to either allow an image or symbol to come through by closing your eyes, or there's different tools that I might use to put them in front of people, and then ultimately your intuition will speak. It'll make you feel something or be like, that one, I don't know why, but that one. And then you can ultimately engage with that symbol and work with that symbol to get insights from it. And some of the processes I use is this kind of ego self dialogue, where you're actually dialoguing with that symbol, and that symbol is ultimately representative of an aspect of you, part of yourself, whether it's a complex or a protective aspect of yourself that wants to offer something. And sometimes it might come through a little challenging or harsh. Sometimes I see that, and then oftentimes it softens, and there's this like really beautiful wisdom and insights that that aspect of you wants to offer. And I find when that happens, those kind of complexes, or a complex that it is connected to, almost starts to like soften in a way. And you can do this through that ego self dialogue. You can do it through journaling. Journaling is a really great way to engage with different aspects of yourself. Also art, so expressive art. Drawing around the dilemma or the issue at hand, and letting kind of anything come to you, whether it's like a concrete or abstract drawing. You can always find wisdom in there that you can then engage with to get more insight.
There's a great book called A Man and His Symbols. Right? I know you do. You studied it. You're talking about it right now. I love it.
Yes. Love that.
Let me bring up Jessie. Jessie, first off, if you guys aren't familiar with Jessie Monreal, incredible speaker. She's been out on the circuit. Not only that, but she works underground, above board, helping people solve big problems. And Jessie, I'm super stoked on all the work you're doing. I hope more people within the sound of my voice go down, click on your profile, and get to see and talk to you, because you're doing cool stuff out there. She says, maybe you don't slay it, you tame it and harness it and use it to help you. Exactly, Jessie. I couldn't agree more. Mm-hmm. Who do we got? Oh, we got Luca coming all the way from Prague. Shout out to Luca. Thank you for being here. She says, are myths the software of human consciousness?
Are myths the software of human consciousness? Yeah, I'd say so. And I want to go back to Jessie's point.
Yeah, please.
I agree with you, like taming it and harnessing it. Yes. But you want to do so in a way that's not restraining it. So it's learning to work with that aspect of you in a way that's not restrained, but in a way that it can kind of come to life in a way that's now aligned and constructive and collaborative, if you will. So we want to kind of like allow those parts of us to live fully and to kind of like integrate into us. And then it will absolutely like really be able to help you. So that's a really great point. Yes, can you repeat the question again for me?
I will, but now I got one more question, because I know my friend Jessie's out there. Like, how, Jessica, when you think about this idea of the dragon and you think about integration or addiction, what comes to mind?
Well, look, I can't speak for everybody, but a lot of times with addiction, it is often used to numb aspects of ourselves that are overwhelming for us to be able to deal with and handle. Traumas, emotions, just life in general. And sometimes it doesn't always happen that way, right? Sometimes it just happens through a surgery or where you got prescribed something and then all of a sudden now you're hooked. But a lot of times it is used to suppress parts of yourself that are really challenging or overwhelming to engage with. And I speak about these complexes that when they are given energy, and sometimes like they're given energy through suppression. So if it just keeps wanting to come through and you just keep suppressing and suppressing and suppressing through, like I know for me, a lot of times I would drink to suppress fear, or I would drink to suppress anxiety so I could go to sleep. And I used wine a lot, or just whatever I didn't want to deal with. And when you do that, ultimately that charge gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and ultimately it could be something that's maybe like a little lizard, and now all of a sudden it's this massive dragon that's trying to like wreak hell. So I think that now we have to say, oh my God, what did we create here? Through all this suppression, and then how now can we like go and kind of give compassion to that dragon and understand like where it's coming from. Oftentimes it's got so much anger or just energy built up that it needs to be released. So it kind of like this taming, right, would be maybe taming it through engagement, through compassion, through just hearing it, listening to it. What does it have to say? What does it need? What needs to be heard? This is all parts of you that have been put down or suppressed that need a space to express. And as you express, you're allowing that energy to move through you. You're putting energy in motion, right? You're allowing it to move through you. And then that's kind of this process of taming it, right? And I guess if you want to like use this context, maybe Jesse meant harness it, meaning like put a harness on it and now jump on it and fly together, like that's a really beautiful analogy. And I can see her meaning that because then you're like now working with it and collaborating with it, because like underneath it, what the true intent was. Like maybe it just needed to be loved. Maybe it was just trying to protect you. Maybe it just wants to make sure that you don't end up in situations like that before. So once you know what ultimately its main purpose is, there's this kind of like integration that happens that now you can live with it in a really powerful way. And now it's like your ally to really kind of like guide you through life in this like beautiful strength and power that you can tap into and use.
It's first off, Jesse's super awesome. Everybody should check her out. She says the Geico lizard turned into a T-Rex. No bueno.
That's right. Oh yeah.
It brings up this other idea. I was talking to and for anybody out there listening, I was talking to my friend Tom from Anselmo Ibogaine. If you're looking for Ibogaine treatment, Anselmo Ibogaine and Tom are amongst the most incredible people out there. I had this long conversation with him, and in his story of evolution of Anselmo Ibogaine, like the story of transition, like there was so much like radical mythology in his personal life that showed the pathway from victim into transcendent coach or transcendent provider. And it just makes me think, Jessica, so much of what we're talking about, and maybe so much you do with Jungian, like that could be such a great, something that could be implemented into all of these sort of addiction centers, is this idea of the mythology, because so many people are there with the dragon, whether they're chasing the dragon or whether they're slaying the dragon. But how much of this mythology and Jungian coaching or seeing these symbols could be rolled into these addiction treatment centers to benefit people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it puts the power back into themselves, right? Because sometimes I think a lot of times you kind of like feel the loss of power, externalizing it to some degree to a substance, right? So when you can kind of understand that this is just a natural journey, it's the journey that everyone goes on throughout different stages of their lives. And it's not just one, it's going to happen it's cyclical. It's going to happen time and time again. And you're going to have to go through this process in multiple experiences. And eventually it just becomes part of you that you can say, okay, now I understand, like I'm in, let's say, the belly of the whale, I'm like, kind of like, I don't know how I'm getting out of this. I just got myself into here and I'm lost. I'm just in darkness and I can't see. And then kind of you're like, well, I got to get out of here. So I'm going to step up, and then you have to face it all. You have to face all the darkness and all of the fight that dragon. So I think by incorporating that into whatever it might be, addiction centers, schools, I think even doing a workshop at a university as well to teach college students this, because they're feeling this over and over and again, and they're going to come into challenges throughout every stage of their life. So ultimately you have to just understand that there is a process that happens when you're faced with a challenge. And it's normal to experience these different states throughout that journey and throughout that process. And once you understand the normalcy, you start to recognize it. Because what happens is when it happens, you're so far in it that it's hard to see. Like you kind of said, when you're getting this outsider's perspective, you're looking in, you're like, okay, I see, you're going to get through this. But you just have to kind of build muscle memory almost into just know, okay, this is a challenging time. I'm going to be able to get through this. And I have different resources that I can go to that are not substance, that are not alcohol. For me, it was like, okay, well, here's a panic attack. Let me grab a Xanax. Or here's, this overwhelming feeling of doom, glass of wine, maybe half a bottle of wine, maybe a bottle of wine, whatever it was, depending on how scary it was for me. And I had to get other tools to know, okay, I'm to get through this naturally, I'm going to have to feel it. And feeling it feels really shitty. And it's really, and I don't want to feel it. But it's the natural progression of getting through trauma and getting through whatever mental health conditions, whatever you want to call it, right? So I had to find different tools. Jungian was one of those tools, because then I had a kind of an arsenal of stuff to go into to say, okay, this is a shadow part of myself. It feels dark, it's scary, but I know that it's normal. And now I know that I can engage with that part to understand what it has to offer, and that ultimately it's just a hidden part of myself that's scared, that needs a little consoling, or needs to know that it's okay. And maybe it's not just that. Maybe it's engaging in something like journaling, or breath work, or dancing, or just going and doing something fun and normal, kind of getting out of spiritual work and just doing something very, very normal. So it's really important to know that there's this kind of cyclical process that has to happen through any stage in life. I mean, anytime you're going to go through a transition, or anytime you want to do something new, or start something new, or a career, a hobby, a relationship, whatever it is, you're going to go through that cycle. So getting comfortable with the flow and the process, and then ultimately having this arsenal of tools that you can tap into when you're at different stages, I think is really incredibly important. And, Jung helped to create the 12 steps program. His work was really influential with developing 12 steps. And ultimately the concept was you need to replace spirit with spirit. So you have to give people, or people need different tools that they can tap into, whether it's a creative faculty, a spiritual practice, whatever it might be, that they can tap into. Because once you remove the spirit of whatever you're addicted to, there's a void, and that void feels very scary. So you have to have something that you can kind of fill up now in that space.
I've never heard that term, replace spirit with spirit, but it makes so much sense. When there is that void, and if you have the void, the first thing that's going to rush in is that old spirit. That's familiar. It feels good. It feels normal. And so refamiliarizing yourself with a different spirit seems like the way to go. It makes me think that we should be, all schools should be teaching the Homeric verses. I think of Odysseus leaving the island of the Lotus Eaters, or escaping from the Cyclops. There's so much wisdom in all of those old mythologies that help guide us to different parts of ourselves. Luca, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Question that the woman asked me. We missed
Luca.
Okay,
Luca's patiently waiting for us. Luca, thank you so much. I'm super stoked you're here, coming all the way from Prague. She says, are myths the software of human consciousness?
think that myths are the connective points to human consciousness. Myths explain human consciousness in a way, and they can guide human consciousness, because myths are ultimately ways to explain things that we're experiencing. It's kind of like ways to explain the hero's journey, if you will, right? So it can bring us to, like, myths can bring us to a new state of consciousness, because it gives us that perspective from the mountain, right? I know someone that teaches through myth, because when you can hear it from through a myth, you can identify with it. You're identifying that those aspects of the journey with parts of yourself, and because you can see it from a different perspective, and ultimately because you can see it from across like a storyline, you can ultimately come up with solutions. From hearing the myth of somebody else's experience, you can come up with solutions that then you could apply for yourself, that maybe if you just looked at your own experience, you wouldn't be able to do, because you're looking at it from here versus like looking at it from here. So yeah, I guess you could say that it could be the software of consciousness, because it's ultimately kind of like ingraining a new way of perception, and by doing so, it's taking you out of your own kind of like bubble, and bringing you forward in a way that you can kind of connect to it to bring yourself forward a little bit by seeing it from a different perspective or a different lens.
Yeah, I love that. It's an interesting way to say that, Luca, like the software of consciousness. For me, it's almost like, I almost think of it as like the default mode network, because we're preloaded on some level with these myths and they get in really fast. So on that aspect, it's like software. And then I guess maybe later in life, hopefully, those myths that you've been running on give way to your own personal myth, and then you can sort of customize it. Like maybe you want a little Odysseus over here, or maybe you want a little bit of some Joseph Campbell on this side over here. You're going to mix and match those myths to sort of create your own myth. So you're the same way a metaphor remixes meaning, so too can you remix those mythologies in your own personal myth to create something original. But that's a great question. I've never thought about it from that aspect before. Thank you, Luca.
Energizing different parts of you. I think it's also like that concept of remembering, right? When you hear
Yeah.
them, you something will wake up in you. So like, again, like if the psyche is trying to look for symbols and images, if you're hearing a myth, there's a part of you that can turn on or awaken. You'll just feel something, or like have like some sort of knowing during the experience of hearing the myth. And by doing so, it's just connecting it to a part of you that already lives inside of you. So it's kind of like, again, that's kind of another way maybe you could think of it as software, that it's like activating or energizing something that's already inside of you that you can use as a tool to kind of like push you forward into this kind of like varying states of consciousness.
Yeah, I love it. Who do we got over here? We got Yara. Yara says, if the hero's journey was the myth of separation, what is the myth of reunification?
Well, I think the third part of the hero's journey could be that unification part, right? Because if you're kind of like separating, right, and then there's this part of like you have to kind of now bring your learnings back into the community, back to yourself. You're kind of like bringing it home. So I think there's like the experience of uniting happens at the end of the journey, and that unification and that individuation. Now, like you've had that transformation, and you want to share that wisdom and those insights and those learnings with other people. It's kind of like now you've got that as part of your medicine that you can offer. So you've united aspects of yourself through that process of like the Jungian process of individuation throughout that hero's journey, right? So you've united the fragmented parts of yourself. So there's this unification that happens at the end for you to become like this more whole, authentic version of yourself. And then I think when you do that, that's what we talked about earlier, where you can create and give back. And that's like a greater unification that you can have within your community.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a different idea around another myth though for unification.
I think becoming the child, I think the camel to the lion to the child is sort of that same sort of reunification. It's like the full circle. Like you've you've taken on all the burdens, you've become the rebel, and then you've realized, you've reunified with the whole. Like, okay, that was all necessary, but now it's my turn to give back and share my experience and share all the way through. But I think they kind of dovetail together on some aspect of reunification. And I think it also speaks to coming back to the idea that you're part of something bigger than you can understand. Like you're part of this whole thing. And you see it everywhere around you on some level. It's
Hmm.
I don't think I'm there yet. Otherwise, I would have the exact answer. I wish I could. I wish I could tell them exactly. But I think I'm still sort of moving into past the rebellion and beginning to understand what it truly means to give back to the whole. And like I'm really trying to be part of that. Like I want to give back all the lessons that I've learned and share with people, even if it seems insignificant. Like I want to give back so people can learn and come from that aspect. We got one more over here.
I think you're doing that
Yeah.
by your podcast too. It's like you're doing really beautiful work by people, bringing people together to share their stories. But then also, you always have such beautiful gifts that you're able to offer, and insights and wisdom that you're able to offer throughout. And even like just your questions are so powerful that they are a gift, because like they just get people to think and share in ways that I don't think that they would have otherwise. So you definitely are doing your work. So I will I will let you know that, at least from my perspective, I very much see that you have a gift that you are offering to the world.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. And thanks to everybody hanging out. What I've learned, and like this, I've been podcasting for almost 6 years now. And what I've learned is that there aren't really any answers, but there are better questions. And so for me, like it's just been this evolution of questions like, oh, that's pretty good. But wait, what about this? And so maybe that's just the process of learning, but that's my advice to everybody out there. Don't look for the answers, just look for better questions, and then that will help guide you to the next set of questions. And like that seems to me, that's been a path that I've been on that's really helped me get to see myself and my family and the people I care about, and getting to have cool conversations with not only people like Jessica, but people in the audience like Luca or Orion or Nina. I'm super stoked on you guys. Thank you for being here and hanging out with us.
And if you can't find the answer and the solution, change the question.
That's a great one. Yeah. Yes. Sometimes it is just reframing that question to get something back, right? Like just changing one or two words in that question, like a how question versus those value driven questions, like why? Why does that happen like that? Like sometimes for me, those questions are pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Orion, shout out to LA. You guys doing okay down there? It looks like some chaos, so thank you for hanging out with us. He says, what's the difference between self creation and spiritual ego?
Self-creation and spiritual ego, they are definitely two different things. Now, so spiritual ego can be something that happens when I think people get caught up in this world, and maybe they misuse some of the insights, wisdom, maybe like innate power that they end up tapping into, and maybe get caught up in it, right? In the spiritual world, a little too caught up in it. But at the same time, ego is not always a negative thing. Ultimately, ego is, when it's healthy, ego is really there to drive our soul's purpose. So you want your ego to be living out your spiritual path, or your kind of your higher self, your spirit, right? So it depends, I think, how you look at spiritual ego. So if you're looking at in the one context, obviously an instance where somebody's getting too caught up in their capacity, their ability, what their I'm not, it's in my head, but I can't find the right words on how to spit this out now. But I think hopefully you know what I mean. Somebody who's basically getting caught up in it. But then if you look at ego used in a healthy way to lead you down your soul's purpose, or on your soul's path, then ego is used in a really beautiful way. Now it becomes your soul's creation, or your spirit's creation. So it is this aspect of connecting to the deepest parts of yourself, the most authentic parts of yourself, and then aligning ego with your higher self. So now ego is what's going to draw you forward to be able to further create yourself, and now kind of give those aspects of yourself to the world. So ego is super important as part of the soul's creation, and as part of now bringing yourself forth into the world in a different way.
I think it's well said. Polar Knights coming all the way over here from Norway. What's up, Polar Knights? Thank you for hanging out with us. Send us some questions in the chat there, Polar Knights. I would love to know what's on your mind. Super thankful for being here. Let me jump over to Nina. Nina says, when does healing become an excuse not to create?
Oh God, healing. Oh man, I know this one very, very deeply. So yeah, you can get so caught up in healing. Where again, it's this concept of like never being good enough, because you're always, that's why earlier I wanted to reframe around the word fix, because if you're constantly fixing yourself, it's going back to that concept of you're not good enough, right? And if you think about it, like, every time you're healing and you're transforming yourself, you're still not feeling like you're there, right? Because you need to heal more. There's still more parts of you that have wounds, or there's still more parts of you that maybe you're ashamed of, or you wish that you would show up differently. So if you can kind of get stuck in this vortex of healing. And that's where I think that can pull you into the shadows, and that can suck you into like this kind of dark underworld of the unconscious. And that's why it's so important to find these, the creation, right? These tools of creation. And when I say creation can be going and dancing, because then you're just kind of expressing in that moment different aspects of yourself through dance. So creation could be, like I said, I always go back to this because there's so many different acts of creation that we can do, that people might not even realize that it's like a really beautiful medicine or tool that they can tap into. So I think that if you get so, let's just say at one point, I think I was like, what term did I use? It was like hypervigilance, healing hypervigilance. Everything had to be healed, and it was so much, and it was so exhausting. And I was taking the same stuff I would do in my prior life of just like too much, always being on, in like my corporate world of just like more. And I was now applying it to kind of healing myself. And it was exhausting and it was too much. And what I realized is I need to take breaks and like do some work and then just be. And just go play, and then just be normal, do anything, not work. And that's really important. And to like, also, as you're doing this work of healing, to know like you're not broken, right? You're not broken. You don't have to necessarily be healed. Ultimately, it's this process of just kind of like remembering who you are underneath it all, and just coming back to more to that part of you. So I think like it's really important to sometimes reframe the word of healing yourself to just remembering and integrating different aspects of yourself.
Yeah, it's really well said. Polar Knights over here, coming all the way from the north of Norway. He says, marriage is a good teacher. Silence is golden. When we think about, so Polar, that's a beautiful way to say it. I love it. Jessica, we talk a lot about the different mythologies and the Jungian archetypes and psychedelics, but I'm wondering if you could tie those together with relationships and what it's like to have a partner.
Yeah, I mean, relationships are absolutely one of your greatest teachers. And marriage, they say, is the ultimate yoga, right? Because it's true. I mean, relationships are so challenging. No matter how much you love the person, they can be so challenging because they're ultimately mirrors, right? If you look at yourself as kind of like an antenna, and you are going to attract someone or draw someone in who is going to be there to show you where you need to continue to do work, show you aspects of yourself that you've tucked away, show you aspects of yourself or wounds that you haven't fully worked on, or you thought you worked on, but now there's deeper wounds that are still there that need to be healed. Show you parts of yourself that you have maybe suppressed or said, oh no, that's not me. You are ultimately attracting someone. Sometimes we'll say it's like your opposite. And that may be why it's feeling like your opposite, because there are different aspects that you have inside of you that either need to be looked at, addressed, healed, or turned on. And that can be such a challenging awakening, to just have light on all all of those different parts of yourself. And that's why like we're often so triggered in relationships, because it just, brings up all of the inner child stuff, all of the stuff that you haven't wanted to address. And you can feel like totally great outside of a relationship. Be like, I did all this work. I've done all this healing, feeling great. I overcame those things. And all of a sudden you get in a relationship. It's like, holy shit, I thought I fixed that one. I thought I worked on that one, but all of a sudden now it comes back up, but it's something that was deeper in there that now needs to be worked on. So it's really important to have a partner that is also aware of that you can communicate with openly and collaborate with, because ultimately that's what it should be. It should be a partnership to collaborate and talk through openly about things that are coming up, and not to use them as a tool to say like, oh, well, don't do this so I don't feel that, but to say, hey, this is bringing this up for me. I want to let you know this is bringing up for me. I need to work through this. In the meantime, this is something that could be supportive for me to work through it. And, here are some things that might be beneficial throughout this experience. And ultimately, it's this kind of like joining in partnership. And I just think that relationships can be tremendously healing. But oftentimes they're so challenging that it's hard to get through some of these aspects of ourselves, especially if the both parties aren't aware that this is like a normal part of the process. It can be really challenging.
Yeah. I once heard a quote that said, it was like in the form of like a question. And the question was, how do you know when you found the person that you should be with forever? And the answer is, they'll try to kill you. How do you know when you found the perfect person? They'll try to kill you. But it brings me up to that idea of opposites. Like, we are so attracted to that. And maybe it's because we see in the other person a whole different perspective, or we see what makes us whole. Like when you find that opposite, it's truly the yin and the yang. Like, oh my God, I never thought about that. And that sort of beauty and that sort of attraction, at some point it begins to, I think it moves like that whole sort of yin and yang moves in a circular pattern, but it gets times where it's so contentious. Like, that is exactly wrong. And like, that's where you start to see like the different relationships, like, but it is that coming together that makes that relationship so much better, because ultimately you're finding a whole part of yourself. You're getting to see yourself, your biggest strengths, your biggest weaknesses, and challenge to grow and become one together, because that other person needs you just as much as you need them. And sometimes it is those polar opposites that really make you whole.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like the complex that is showing up, right? Like you could be totally fine, and all of a sudden they say something, and all of a sudden it's like you black out, and somebody else comes forward, and it's like, it's just like, what just happened? It's like these complexes that that come through, and they're speaking from past experiences.
Yeah.
What happened oftentimes was valid for something, some sort of exchange.
Yeah.
But it may not have been, it may not have required such a strong, intense emotion. And oftentimes when that emotion is so intense and so strong and so overpowering, that's where it's not something within just this experience, that an exchange that you're having right now. It's something deeper in you that is now coming forth and coming up. And that's why it's so important for people to work together and just to be honest about like, hey, I'm getting triggered right now, and for that other person to not get defensive, because oftentimes that happens. They get defensive because they didn't intend to make you feel that way. They didn't intend to hurt you. And that's why it's like, you have to just really appreciate and honor everyone's unique experience, and to know like, I'm sorry that I caused that experience, or that whatever happened led you to have that experience. It wasn't my intent. Like something as simple as that can soften that ego or that complex, so that now you can work together as like, not out of that state of trigger or complex, and work through it. But it's really challenging, obviously, when that takes over. So it can be important sometimes to just step away, so you're not acting out of that place, and then say, okay, why did that come up? Obviously something happened right here that I'm not happy with, but is it connected to something deeper? Is this more here? There more here that maybe I need to go explore? And why did that specific thing trigger me so much? And it's never to like invalidate the person's reason for being triggered, because oftentimes like there's a very valid reason for that that triggering, or for that person to like not like what happened in the moment, but oftentimes it's so strong, it's connected to something else.
It's such higher level functioning too, because it's so easy to get trapped in those emotions. And I know from experience in my relationships, like how often is the conversation you're having with your partner the conversation you were having with you? Are you arguing with your wife or your mom? Are you arguing with your husband or you're arguing with your dad? You know what I mean? Like, so you have to step back and be like, whoa, what am I doing? That's not what they meant. That's not what they said. But that's so hard to do unless you're really like in the moment and understanding that, like, and you're conscious of your word choice and you're conscious of your intentions. Like, okay, I'm not even arguing about this bill over here. I'm arguing about something that happened when I was 12. I should just step back and recenter myself and know that this person's trying to help me on some level. They're bringing something up. It's interesting to think about that aspect of it.
Yeah. And sometimes it is just like a combination of just like other things that are happening in the relationship. Sometimes it truly is just like this relationship that, the connection bids are getting missed, or, the things that you're asking for just continue to go unheard, or you're not feeling seen, whatever it might be. So there truly are aspects of the relationship that are causing, the issues and the arguments. So that is one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is that there's something deeper here that needs to be addressed. And both are true.
We're getting some huge props over here from Polar Knights. Polar Knight says, this is a huge shock for me to see and listen to two normal Americans. I assume this is how it feels to win the lottery. See, we're kind of awesome over here. Some of us, at least Polar Knight, some of us are kind of awesome, and we're super stoked that you're here. I would love to hear your thoughts on relationships. Put us in the chat over there and let us know. How do you? Here's one though, Jessica. So we've spoken about the relationships and how critical it is in order to take that argument and turn it into, like, alchemize it into something beneficial for both people. But how do you separate, like, the argument from a toxic relationship? Are there signs that you can look for to know? What do you think?
Oh, I lost your...
Oh, I lost you right there. She's coming back in just 1 second, though, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Are you back?
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, good. That's really important too, because sometimes people can, like, you can get in this conceptual thought that, oh, it's just my trauma. It's just my trigger. Like, I'm getting triggered by my trauma, or, it's my complexes that are the issue here. And I'm really glad that you brought awareness to it, because it's super important, because people might stay in things too long because they're thinking that perhaps it's their fault because of the wounds that they're carrying. And especially if you're, people are in a relationship with someone who's a bit narcissistic, whether they realize it or not, it's a very easy story to frame, that it's always the individual, that they're just bringing something up. It's another issue that they're trying to solve or trying to bring to the table, and here we go again, like that type of mentality. And ultimately, I think there's a lot of work that, and again, you could be drawing that person to you, like, literally for a very specific reason, because that requires you ultimately to go in and find your inner truth and say, okay, like, I understand that, I have triggers, I have wounds, I'm coming into this with past experiences and baggage, as we all do. But the reality of it is, like, you have to have a certain barometer of how you want to be treated and what you expect. And they, I guess if you're practicing Buddhism, you're not supposed to have expectations, but when you're in a relationship, you need some expectations and some standards here. So you want to like have this barometer of, like, how do I expect to be treated? How do I want to be treated? And how will I be treated in a relationship? And that has to be a core foundation, that you're getting treated right. And yes, of course, you're going to have challenges and experiences, and maybe you're going to, like, react in certain ways. The other person is going to react in certain ways. But if it's to the point where it's not meeting, like, certain standards, or it's not, let's say, getting better, it's not working towards resolution, and some of these things aren't starting to soften or not happen as often, then you really have to look at it and say, like, all right, is this really workable here? Or for whatever reason, maybe we're not doing the work. Maybe it's just maybe the compatibility is off, just because there's no movement. So I do think that you have to have movement, and you are going to move forward and you are going to step back. You are going to, it's a bit of a like a dahlia where you're kind of expanding and contracting. Like that absolutely happens in relationships. But are you being heard, and are you starting to see those changes? And is the person, are both people doing the work, so that they can show up differently the next time? Are the arguments like less frequent or less intense, or not as long? So you have to look, I think, at the patterns. If it's the same pattern and there's no change in the pattern, then perhaps it is a toxic relationship and something that you need to get out of. And you also have to say, like, is this environment a place that I can heal these triggers and these wounds? Because if the other person isn't willing to partner with you in the process and in that journey, it might be, maybe the lesson in learning is about choosing yourself, and saying, okay, well, I'm not in an environment that I can be, these parts of me can be nurtured and can be held and can be loved. And in fact, maybe it's more traumatizing to stay in the relationship because of how the person is handling the responses. So there has to be this collaboration, and nurturing that you have to do with each other, and each other's inner child. And if that's not there, then you have to really look at it and say, like, is this an environment that these parts of me can feel safe to heal, or do have maybe the support to heal? Because I don't think that you get into relationships and you're supposed to do all of the healing independently on your own. I think that'll actually divide you in a way. I think it is actually supposed to connect you and bring you closer together through that vulnerability.
Yeah. What do you think is the role of silence in relationships? I know that sometimes it's used to wound, but I think it can also be a profound tool for healing in relationships. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, silence can be really useful in those really challenging times too, when you want to lash out or you want to say something, or that whatever you say, whether you intend to or not, is going to come with a certain energetic tone that is not going to be felt in the way that you maybe would like it to. Then silence is super important in those moments. That's where you can just have silence and just say, okay, I really want to say this. There's this ball that's about to like word vomit out, but I'm just going to like hold on to it for a moment, and maybe just like explore where I'm at and what I need at this time, and explore maybe is there somewhere else that this is coming from. And sometimes just and oftentimes, like, you can feel like you're getting like one, especially if you've had bad relationships in the past, you feel like you need to protect yourself at all times, right? So you want to kind of like stick up for yourself or stand up for yourself. But sometimes in that moment, silence can be so powerful, and you can kind of wait until there's less of like the energetic charges between you two, and then come back and have a conversation, because you'll have some time to really think through it. And just like silence in general, I think is important to just like be with the other person in their presence, even as an argument.
Yeah, the role of silence. Like, I'm reminded of that saying that says the silence is deafening. And sometimes, like, if you've been in a relationship long enough, you know exactly what I mean. When someone's not talking to you and you're like, oh my God, what are they thinking? Or what are they supposed to say? What am I thinking? But the role of silence in relationships is such an effective tool to not only become the best relationship, but also to become the best version of yourself and understand what it means to be part of something bigger than you. Like, that silence is key in so many aspects of it. But
Well, and also just silence
yeah,
when you're alone too, just so you can like separate yourself. It's also like, when we get in relationships, this is something Jung said, like, you kind of come together, right? And there's this like really beautiful aspect of coming together, and you feel so incredible. And then all of a sudden, like, there's kind of this like, oh wow, who am I anymore? I've lost myself. And you then need to like start to separate. And it's a challenging time in the relationship, because it's from this like honeymoon stage to all of a sudden like, wow, I've lost myself, and
yeah,
so it's kind of now this like separation that has to happen so that you can kind of be two individuals walking together. And I think silence is a really important tool during that time, so you can kind of step away, see who you are without that person, feel who you are without that person, without that person's energies. Especially if you're a highly sensitive person, you're just always engulfed in their energy. So to be able to step out, go to the woods, go for a walk, and see who you are alone, and just remember that. So when you're coming in as yourself, not this person that's kind of like somehow like kind of like chameleoned into each other, because that definitely does happen.
yeah, I can totally see it. I've seen it in my own life. What about silence as a symbol? Is there a what would Jung say, or maybe in your personal experience, is there a symbol for silence?
Let me close my eyes and see what comes.
Yeah, let's think about it.
I just, I'm seeing a cloud. That's what I'm seeing. I just see like kind of like a kind of like a very like diamondish cloud or crystallish cloud, I guess, if you will. It's, yeah, cloud, I guess, because you allow things to pass through silence. If you think about sitting in meditation, you're in silence. Like if you look at thoughts as clouds, they just kind of like
Yeah,
through, and there's just this, transparent yet kind of fullness of clouds too, and it just kind of brings this softness to you, and almost this kind of like out of reach softness. It brings it down to you. So I would think, I don't know, clouds are coming to my mind right now, but also silence is really important when I do work with people. We're going through these journeys, and we're kind of going through this kind of like spiral, if you will, into their unconscious. It's really important when there is silence to just allow, because that is a space where we're allowing intuition or psyche to offer something. And maybe if it's not a symbol or a word that's going to come through, maybe it's a feeling. So in that silence, there's more of us that is able to come through, perhaps parts of us that have been hiding or haven't been as comfortable coming through. That silence is super important. It's a really important time. I think just in general, even in conversations at work, pausing and allowing for that silence, to give people space, and yourself space for what it lays deeper, maybe has been a bit shy.
yeah, that's really well said. When you bring up the cloud idea, I think of I forgot this word, but it's like pareidolia or something like that. When you look at clouds and then like you make images out of them, like you imagine, when you lay down. I think it's called pareidolia. But so much of that comes in silence. It's that ruminating in the quiet moments that allow you to really unpack what was said or what you said or what happened in between the dialogue. So yeah, I love the idea of the cloud being there. And it is interesting. Like they say absence makes the heart grow fonder, but it's the silence of the other person that really makes you think truly about them and what they're thinking and what they're trying to get through on some level. So I would agree that the silence is such an important part of it over there. It's really it's amazing to me. Jessica, I love talking to you. It was such an awesome conversation, from the camel to the lion to the child to relationships and silence. I love what you're doing, and I love the way you're able to break it down in a way that people can understand. And shout out to Jesse and Polar Nights and Nina and Orion and everybody that hung out with us in the chat today. I'm so grateful for all of you. And if the things we were talking about, they speak to you, reach out in the chat. I'm going to have all Jessica's links down there, but reach out to her and ask her some questions yourself. And as I'm landing the plane over here, I want to turn it back to you, Jessica. Where can people find you? What do you have coming up? What are you excited about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And yes, wonderful conversation. Exciting as always. Amazing questions from you and the audience. So thank you. Thank you. Super grateful. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jessica Tracy, and then also on Instagram _Jessica Tracy _. So please, if you'd be interested, you can connect with me on both and reach out with any questions that you may have. My website is jessicathe.Jungian.coach. If you're interested in more of the Jungian work, and then if you're interested more in the psychedelics from the business perspective, the Sage Collective is my other company. So thesagecollective.co. Yeah, and I have some shadow work workshops coming up. I'm always, trying to bring that work into other places. I'm doing some at some yoga studios, a university, which is super exciting, some corporations. So if you ever have any interest in incorporating any of that aspect in a group setting, would love to do any of that. And yeah, I have a retreat that I'm planning with my partner at the looking like probably over New Year. So more to come there. And that's all that's top of mind right now. But yeah, if you follow me, and I'll be sharing and posting more stuff.
Yeah, and if you're out there, if you're one of the guests that are listening, Polar Nights, reach out to me in the email and I'll send you some free books that you will absolutely love. That goes for you too, Nina and Luca, everybody else. Reach out to me. I got some books I'll send you. I want to send a shout out to Anselmo Ibogaine Center. My friend Tom over there is doing incredible work. He's incredibly talented at what he does. My friend Jacob at 216. If you guys are interested in death and psychedelics, there's a really big event coming up. Check out the links in the show notes. And Jessica, hang on briefly, but to everybody else, I hope you have a beautiful day. Thanks for hanging out with us. That's all we got. Aloha.